Good afternoon. My name is Emily Crow, and I am currently attending Regent University. Today I will be presenting a paper titled A Tempest of Mirrors and Mimicry. The Tempest by William Shakespeare gives the audience a fantastical look into a world of spirits, betrayal, and magic. These mystical elements come to life vividly on the page and stage, but below the surface level of clear themes and characters, one can also find Shakespeare himself on stage and giving commentary on his own writing and the writing of his era through the play. Shakespeare creates a play containing an extended allegory. He uses the play to mirror his own thoughts and infuses the characters' desires and choices with his own. In addition to reflecting Shakespeare, many characters in the play find themselves as part of a pair caught in a reflection of mimetic desire. Caliban and Ariel both desire a form of freedom, yet the form of freedom they long for differs. Caliban simply desires an escape from Prospero since he currently favors Ariel, and in doing so, deprives Caliban of the treatment that he longs for. Ariel truly seeks the individual freedom to make his own path. Prospero and his brother Antonio both seek power and control. Prospero seeks that control and power through his intellect and his books, while Antonio tends to take a more violent approach and strong-arm people into doing what he wants. While their methods contrast, the brothers carry a mimetic rivalry, in addition to the characters mirroring each other. Shakespeare himself reflects the essence of Prospero, while the similarities between the illusory magic and the poetic writing that resonates within the words of Shakespeare's multitude plays. The characters in Shakespeare's The Tempest work in collaborative pairs to demonstrate mimetic desire, while also reflecting Shakespeare's own thoughts and commentary on his personal plays and how they have changed through time. The characters of Caliban and Ariel mirror each other's desires for freedom. Both spirits experience entrapment and work to serve Prospero in order to gain their freedom, despite the fact that the island belonged to them before Prospero arrived. When Prospero arrives on the island, the relationship between Caliban and Prospero comes across as one of mutualistic symbiosis. Both characters benefited from the other. Gerard writes, Caliban loved his island and knew it so well that to someone who did not, such as Prospero, he could teach many things without saying a single intelligible word. Caliban served as Prospero's guide to the island, and in return, Prospero taught Caliban the beneficial act of speaking. Unfortunately, the relationship in which both parties benefits quickly ends with this act. Prospero enslaves Caliban and releases Ariel from his prison. In this way, Ariel and Caliban represent two sides of the same coin. Gerard writes, when Prospero first made Caliban his minister, Ariel was forcibly repressed, and when Ariel was freed in order to take Caliban's place, it was Caliban's turn to be forcefully repressed. The play presents the two spirits as part of a metaphorical seesaw, with Prospero standing stoically in the middle. When Prospero raises one in his favor, the other falls and suffers negative consequences of living under Prospero's reign. Prospero acts as the ultimate puppeteer by manipulating the spirits, and even his own daughter, to bend to his selfish desires. Gerard writes, we cannot say exactly where the line should be drawn between Caliban and Ariel, and should not try to, because even though the two spirits are incompatible in principle, their de facto coexistence is suggested. They balance each other out. With their contrasting personalities and methods of achieving their desire, Caliban acts as an individual that requires the assistance of someone else to lead him and tell him how he should behave. At the same time, Ariel operates independently throughout the play, with the singular guidance from Prospero. Even when serving Prospero's commands, he creatively solves obstacles that he comes upon. Ariel proves himself more independent and creatively minded than that of his mimetic rival, Caliban, who requires explicit instruction and seeks a ruler to guide him. During the current time that the play takes place, Caliban actively holds the role of a slave since Prospero shows favoritism towards Ariel. Yet, when given the opportunity to find a beneficial ally that would lead to his freedom, Caliban crowns himself a new god. Gerard states that both Ariel and Caliban want to be free, but not for the same purpose. A born slave, Caliban desires freedom, only to squander it again on more mediators. The desire for freedom from Prospero varies from a more true form of freedom. Caliban actively searches for a god that would show him a favor, and upon his meeting of Trinculo, he believes that he finally found the perfect replacement for Prospero. Gerard writes, as he selects Trinculo for his mediator, Caliban makes him the same offer as to Prospero earlier. He wants to show his new god his beautiful island. The audience or reader gets an idea of the meeting of Prospero and Caliban, and in acknowledging how their relationship began, the reality of the destruction of the relationship becomes increasingly clear. Through Caliban's perspective, Trinculo and Prospero exist as mere images of each other. He sees a future ruler within Trinculo and believes he would treat him better than Prospero. His desire for a god who shows favor upon him deviates from his desire that Ariel holds for his freedom. Gerard clarifies Caliban is a monster because he worships Trinculo, not the other way around. Caliban appears no more a monster than Ariel in terms of physical definition. The choices that he makes define him and show his monstrous tendencies of betrayal and his longing to serve a god that prioritizes him. While mirroring Caliban's desires, Ariel also behaves in a more reformed and advanced way by comparison. If Caliban holds the title of monster due to his actions, Ariel, in contrast, represents a more angelic figure. Both titles exaggerate the characteristics of the spirit, but show opposite sides of the spectrum. Prospero's repression of Caliban appears more obvious than his repression of Ariel. When Ariel enters first, he says, "All hail, great master, grave sir, hail! I come to answer thy best pleasure. Be it to fly, to swim, to dive into the fire, to ride on the curled clouds, to thy strong bidding task, Ariel in all his quality." This line shows Ariel's loyalty to Prospero, but also demonstrates how Ariel lives in complete service to him. The loyalty stems from the fact that Prospero freed Ariel from the prison where the past master of the island had placed him. It becomes clear that Prospero only freed Ariel with selfish intentions. Gerard writes, Prospero freed Ariel from the pine tree in order to exploit his literary is abhorrent to this independently minded spirit. The freedom comes with a price. Prospero promises to free Ariel after he serves him and helps him to obtain his desires. The character of Ariel holds a natural intelligence that Prospero identifies, manipulates, and also appreciates. Gerard writes, Ariel desires freedom from all mimetic servitude. Unlike Caliban, Ariel seeks freedom from all forms of servitude. Ariel's character design shows a more delicate spirit and carries a look more commonly recognized as a positive force. Caliban carries a more demonic or savage or primal look. Their character designs purposely reflect Shakespeare's views on the poetry and plays that he wrote. The Tempest holds the label as one of the last plays that Shakespeare wrote. Gerard writes, The Tempest is no timeless portrait of the artist, by a dynamic history of Shakespeare's oeuvre, which is divided into two periods, one signified by Caliban and the other by Ariel. Shakespeare looks back at his work and turns them into characters on the stage. Caliban embodies the older work that he wrote, and Ariel serves as the newer. The Tempest would fall into Ariel's category. Gerard writes, Caliban symbolizes uneducated poetic feeling, poetry before language, formless, immoral, even immoral, dangerous therefore, and possibly reprehensible, but real poetry nonetheless. Writers change and grow, and as they become more experienced, their styles can change. Freelance writing shares that after completing Hamlet, Shakespeare adopted a more centered swift, distinct, and non-repetitive writing style. He began to use more run-on lines, uneven pauses and stops, and excessive alterations to sentence lengths and structure. Shakespeare's experience and advancements in writings become encapsulated in Ariel, the wiser and more independent character. The character who also shows more noble and refined qualities compared to its counterpart. Likewise, Caliban's role goes beyond the monster. Gerard even points out how Shakespeare uses Caliban to show how monstrous his past works seem in comparison to his later works. When Prospero first arrives on the island, Caliban serves him as the primary spirit, and he treasures him, but then discovers a new and more refined spirit that serves him better. Prospero's desire to improve and upgrade mirrors Shakespeare's desire to write bigger and brighter stories and characters. Much like Ariel and Caliban serve as mirrors of each other, Prospero and his brother Antonio mirror each other with their desire for power and control. The first case of the two fighting over control takes place before Prospero comes to the island and the play begins. Prospero held the title of the Duke of Milan. He loved and treasured his brother, and he trusted him to help him run the area under his control. Unfortunately, Antonio betrayed his brother and gained control of the dukedom by plotting against him. Antonio strips Prospero of his authority and power and essentially exiles him. Prospero recounts the story to his daughter Miranda, saying, In my false brother awakened an evil nature, and my trust, like a good parent, did beget of him a falsehood in its contrary, as great as my trust was, which had indeed no limit, a confidence since bound. Prospero tells how he did nothing but love and help his brother, and even helped Antonio to gain his own power and status within the dukedom. Still, in the end, Antonio's evilness won over Prospero's generosity and love. He continues saying, he being thus lorded not only with the revenue yielded, but with my power might else exact, like one who, having into the truth by telling of it, made such a sinner of his memory to credit his own lie. Prospero grew bitter and full of hate due to this event, and he mourned the loss of the control and power that came with losing his title. These events impacted Prospero's behavior and treatment of others when he arrives on the island. Gerard writes, no sooner had he lost it, however, than he furiously wanted it back. Prospero desires his life back before his brother destroys it. He works to make the island home, and then even that becomes under threat by his brother's desire for power and control. Antonio starts off the play with a treacherous backstory, and his actions throughout the play do not improve his tarnished reputation. While the reader or audience may see Prospero's perception of his brother as biased or impacted by feelings, the choices that Antonio makes while on the island prove him more of a monster than Caliban. Gerard writes, his nemesis is his younger brother, Antonio. The two siblings were great friends, of course, but their friendship ended when Prospero had the bad idea of inviting Antonio to replace him on the throne for a while. The villain took to the new role as a fish takes to water. Early in the play, Antonio convinces Sebastian to join him in killing Gonzalo and Alonso. He manipulates people with his very persuasive words and ideas. He twists other people's desires. He says, for all the rest, they'll take suggestions as a cat laps milk. They'll take the clock to any business that we say benefits the hour. Antonio manipulates people in a similar way to Prospero manipulates Caliban and Ariel. But with all these mirror desires, who shall be successful? Caliban and Ariel both work towards achieving freedom from Prospero. Prospero and Antonio seek power and control. Gerard writes, the fact that one has real weapons in his arsenal and the other mere words is no radical difference. In the final scene of the play, all the desires come to rest in one way or another. Alonso returns the dukedom of Milan to Prospero. Prospero addresses his backstabbing brother, saying, "For you, most wicked sir, whom to call brother would even infect my mouth, I do forgive thy rankest fault, all of them, and require my dukedom of thee, which perforce I know thou must restore." Prospero takes back all of the power and control that he once lost without having to hear another line from his brother, because his brother does not get his true vengeance satisfied. Prospero ideally would have had his brother grovel and apologize. Gerard writes, "Antonio never humbles himself in front of his brother. Prospero's literary vengeance goes up in smoke." Ariel, having faithfully intervened so everyone survived the shipwreck and also restored the ship so they would possess a way to leave the island, he delivers the crew of the boat and the rest of the main characters in the final scene and says to Prospero, "Sir, all this service have I done since I went." When Caliban joins the group in the final scene, Antonio continues to wear the title of the villain as he jumps into the idea of selling Caliban as a creature with no soul or desire. Knowing Caliban's betrayal, Prospero keeps him enslaved and abandons him on the island. Ariel, who serves him faithfully and ends up helping to obtain his desire, obtains his freedom. Ariel's enslavement comes to an end and he gains his true desire. Gerard writes, "What symmetry can there be between a ruthless man of action and an impotent intellect on a desert island?" The symmetry of all the vengeful doubles, of course. At first glance, all the characters reflect goals and characteristics, but through analysis, all of the main characters carry some sort of mimetic desire. Only those looking towards the future and overcoming the past achieved their true desires. In addition to mirroring each other, Shakespeare also inserts his desires and perspective into the play and the characters. Gerard writes, "In the Tempest, all quintessential Shakespearean themes are present: mimetic enticement, the sacrificial crisis, the mystified discourse and mimetic rivalry, the monstrous doubles, and so on, but they are disconnected from one another and not really dramatic. This play demonstrates the harsh reality of the consequences of one's desires and the lengths that people will go in order to achieve them. The Tempest acts as a final goodbye, as it lies towards the end of Shakespeare's writing years. Many scholars believe the epilogue of the play represents Shakespeare's desire to say farewell to the stage through Prospero saying goodbye to his sorcery."